Foster Motor. My name is Tommy. Today is Friday, April 14th, 2022. This is day 2 of my Seattle trip, and I'm starting the day off at Pike's Place, basically a market. I'm going to eat lots and lots of food. Right here, I'll be showing it all off. Doing a harbor tour later, and also a Scotch tasting. All right, let's go. On the top is the beef and cheese. The bottom is the meatball. They're both incredibly good. It's extremely soft texture on the breading. I probably have to give the slight edge to the beef and cheese on the bottom. The meatball's still extremely good. It just occurred to me, I'd say a good comparison is this is kind of like a high-class White Castle slider.
Today we had hail and snow here, right out there. So yes.
Just a slice of pepperoni pizza. Some Parmesan on top. Very simple but done extremely well. Crust is extremely soft. It's got this very butteriness to it. It's really, really good sauce.
I bet. Especially with kids like Ezra.
Maybe. Really impressive looking. Fudge is just dripping. Wow. Extremely good. Those marshmallows are heaven. It's very delicate and messy though. Wish I could be a little more aggressive, but it's amazing.
Forever core memory. We're all food and then
This is the cheese curd lasagna and the mac and cheese. I don't quite taste what's cheese curdy about it, but it's still very good lasagna. This is really exceptional mac and cheese. It's incredibly creamy. I feel like a creamy taste of a mac and cheese. This is very heavy, creamy leaning. I got the pan au chocolat, or chocolate croissant, basically. A little bit crunchy, pretty soft and flaky. Perfect. Oh, bummer. Place is closed. Was going to be my next food stop, or shall I say final food stop. We will see. Just going to leave this area because our harbor tour is coming up soon. Bummer about the barbecue place, but oh well, that last croissant was a good item to finish on. I mean, they all were. Everything was amazing. It's really hard picking out a favorite because everything was so good and everything is very distinct from any other item that I had. I'm on the harbor tour now. Here it is.
If you have a ticket, please check in at the booth interview.
I can let you know all about the sites as we make our 1 hour trip around Elliott Bay.
The boat you're traveling on today, so be sure to use caution and use all handrails when moving around. Also, please keep an eye on small children. Thank you for cruising with us. You're right with the boat.
Real loud noise. It's one of the best parts of the job. Making a big loud noise. Our neighbor back then was at Pier 54 here, and his name was Ivor Haglund. You guys had Ivors at this point? It's pretty tasty fish and chips, but he used to be an aquarium. Yukon, for those of you fans of geography, is up in Alaska, right? But it took off from here because this was the easiest access port to get to then take a boat up to the Yukon. So people spent all their money here in Seattle buying boots, supplies, tack, food, anything they needed for that trip up to Alaska. And Seattle was a big old town, basically for that entire period of time, and put us economically on the map. If you guys are familiar with Nordstrom's, Bartell Drugs, any of those companies, or maybe the United Parcel Service, or Boys and Brown delivering packages, they all started during the Yukon Gold Rush right here in Seattle. Now the oldest pier on our waterfront is actually here at Pier 59. It's undergone lots of changes over the years. It's now the Seattle Aquarium. They have my favorite exhibit over there of sea otters. You guys familiar with sea otters? That is the #2 most photographed location in the entire city. Do you guys know what #1 is? The Space Needle. That's absolutely right. We're going to get coming up on that here in just a little bit. But I urge you to visit Pike Place Market while you're in town, especially if you're hungry. They have some of the most fantastic food up there. One of my favorite places is Los Agaves Tacos. As fans of little taco shops, they do really awesome street tacos up there in the market. And one of my favorite places for dessert up there is called The Confectional. They sell mini artisanal cheesecakes. Yeah, and they have monthly flavors for all the different kind of seasonal things going on. There's also the very first Starbucks, well, sort of the second and the third, because the first two burnt down, up there in the market. And they have some unique merch that you can't find at any other Starbucks anywhere else in the world. So that's an interesting place to visit if you're a coffee aficionado. And moving right along here, the waterfront, we've got Bell Harbor Marina on the right-hand side. It is a day stay marina, so people can park their boat here for a very short period of time while they're in town. I believe the limit is 72 hours. So it's kind of like a city parking lot. You live out on the islands, over 200 islands here in the San Juans. You might bring your boat down here if you need to do something in the city. The American Spirit is actually going to be doing local cruises. They're going to be doing a trip up to the San Juan Islands. I believe they're going to be departing here in a few days. There's over 200 islands in the San Juans, and some of them are just drop-dead gorgeous. They're amazing up there. My favorite is called Susha Island. It's got some really awesome fjord-like inlets up there. Now, all these waterways were carved out by glaciers back in the day, so there's truly some stunning islands up there, and if you have the chance, I recommend you go visit the San Juans. These last two piers here, Piers 69 and 70, are both basically office space for various companies and organizations, but as we come around here, we're going to get an excellent, most unobstructed view of the Space Needle that we're going to get for the entire trip, so I recommend you guys take the moment to take a photo here of the Space Needle. This was the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. They were a newspaper organization before Washington State gained its statehood, and they reported on that Yukon Gold Rush. Gold, gold, gold was the headline. Pretty fervent, and they actually took a poll for their readers for a new logo for their newspaper, and people really were into Superman at the time, so the Superman logo came first, which I think is a pretty fun thing to say about that. Oh, there's actually a seaplane, looks like it's taking off behind the Space Needle right there, just to the left of it, which is pretty cool. Lake Union is actually a seaplane, basically landing strip out there on the other side of this body of land. So that's a pretty cool thing to see. Plane taken off there. They were actually pioneered by Bill Boeing. You guys might be familiar with the Boeing name. He pioneered the use of seaplanes over there in Lake Washington because, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a lot of hills around here. Pretty tough to make an airstrip on hills. So flying on these waters made it a lot safer. Free access beachfront. It's kind of a high tide right now, so we definitely don't see anybody screwing around too much in that low tidal water, looking for shellfish or anything like that. But you'll especially notice, even though it's a nice, hot, sunny day today, that nobody is swimming in these waters. That's because it's incredibly cold in the waters here. It's all back from the Pacific. That Arctic Ocean water is coming down through the San Juans, and this water is very deep. So it holds that thermal energy there and keeps it really cold all year round. Even on a hot summer day in the middle of June, we'll get to about 56 degrees Fahrenheit at the lowest. That's really chilly. We'll have to do it in about 10 minutes unless you have special training or a wet or dry suit. I really don't recommend it. What it is good for is our local wildlife. Turns out cold water is really good for little tiny critters like krill. And krill turns out really good for salmon. You guys like salmon? Yeah, we have 5 of the 6 types of salmon come through this area. And in fact, these pins here on our right-hand side are some of those delayed release salmon fisheries. So a salmon hatchery over in Eastern Washington sends out fingerling salmon, and then because they're anadromous fish living some of their life in freshwater and some of their life in saltwater, they spend their time here in this saltwater, kind of acclimated, getting strong, getting big, and then eventually once they're strong enough, they'll be released out into the environment. They'll go on their odyssey out there in the ocean, and eventually they'll come back to spawn out in the freshwater rivers. It comes in by rail car, gets unloaded into those silos there, and from there sent on these large ships overseas to our trading partners in Eastern Asia. It's going to be mostly soybeans, about 70% soybeans, probably 30% corn, and it's all rated by the FDA. It's not suitable for human consumption for whatever reason. I'm not going to go into detail about that. But it's for cattle. So it goes overseas, they feed it to cows and pigs, and etc. And then we get that delicious meat in return, presumably. So that's our largest export by volume. Our largest export by GDP, you might guess to be airplane parts, right there from Boeing. Talked about that earlier. There's a huge Boeing plant up there in Everett, just north of here. And then there's the Boeing field down there to the south of Renton. On waterfront, these are piers 90 and 91. These are the longest 2 piers in the Northern Hemisphere. And they were the point of disembarkation in World War II for the Pacific Theater. So all the troops that went to the Pacific came through this area. This first pier right here, Pier 90, is actually our industrial fishing pier. And they don't actually fish off the pier. A lot of boats like the Excellence here make trips into Alaska. They catch, fillet, and flash freeze their fish up there, which is quite a tongue twister. And then they're going to send it back down here into this cold storage facility. That's going to be primarily Alaskan pollock. Alaskan pollock is in cat food, imitation crab, filet of fish, fish sticks, anything that has ambiguous fish in it, or perhaps it's just labeled fish. Is probably Alaskan pollock. And I can bet that it was probably produced run right through this pier here. The next pier on the way is Pier 91. That's our cruise ship terminal. We constructed that up in 2007 to great demand. Again, more and more cruise ships wanted to leave out of this area and see the beautiful waters of Alaska. And there's also a lovely marina here. This is Elliott Bay Yacht Club and Marina. Yacht Club first, and Marina second. So you have to have membership with the yacht club in order to board your vessel there. But that comes with some unique amenities. One of them is an on-site stylist. So your hair gets all mussed up in the wind, as all of our hair is going to get mussed up here in a second. Then you can go see the stylist and they'll fix your hair right now. There's also a cafe up there if you're hungry. And then I'll kind of do a little loop here. I'll start here on the right and then I'll come around to the left and tell you all about what's around us here. Now, these Olympic Mountains here on our right. The Olympic Mountains are on average around 6,000 feet tall, and they are between us and the Pacific Ocean. So how that works hydrogeographically is that when rain comes into this area, it has to release much of that water before it can scrape its way over the mountains. And we can actually see this happening right now. You can see the clouds kind of scraping over the tops of the mountains, and then we get these lovely bottom cut-off nimbus clouds that come this way. Now those clouds might sprinkle us a little bit with the rain as they make their way over to the Cascade Mountain Range. You can see there's another accumulation of clouds over there. The Cascades are on average 9,000 feet tall, so they have to scrape more water over before they make their way to Eastern Washington, which is basically a desert. So over there on the far side of those mountains, they get a lot of rain. Here in this area, we get a little bit of rain, pretty reasonable amount. They get a ton of rain over there in the East Cascade or West Cascades, and then Eastern Washington gets almost no rain at all. It's kind of a funny Mediterranean climate in this area. So we get about 40 inches of rain a year on average. Over there on the far side of those mountains, they get 170 inches of rain a year. That's a tremendous amount of water coming from the sky. That's going to actually contribute to the growth of the largest temperate rainforest in the world over there, the Hoh National Rainforest. Lots of current flowing, but we don't have any real waves to speak of outside of if there's a lot of wind in this area or a ferry goes by or something like that. Now off our left, we've got some excellent views of the downtown Seattle skyline. We've got the space in all the way on the left-hand side of the skyline. It's that, well, whichever do you guys think it is. It's got those white spires leading up to that UFO shape dead smack in the middle of the space race. The Jetsons was in full swing. The Russians were going to the moon. You know, everything was crazy back then. So They painted all sorts of fun space-themed colors. Galactic gold, re-entered red, astronaut white, orbital olive, all sorts of fun space-themed colors. Nowadays, it's a very calm Seattle gray. Kind of blends in with the clouds in the background a little bit. It's a pretty cool tower. That is probably the shortest 5-story building you've ever seen in your life, or tallest 5-story building you've ever seen in your entire life. Because that space needle only has 5 working floors. It's a gift shop, ticket booth down there on the first level. Just about a fifth of the way up the tower, there's that little black band. Columbia Center Tower there on the right is an older tower, and it is the tallest building in the skyline. I like to refer to it sometimes as the box the space tool came in. Looks like the space tool would fit just right in there. And it has a pretty interesting history on its own. The Columbia Center Tower was intended to be pretty much like the Empire State Building over here. They wanted to put a big tall spire on the top of it. They wanted it to be much taller than it is. They wanted it to be an icon here in the Seattle skyline. Unfortunately for them, there's an organization called the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and they make sure the flight paths are all safe, right? You guys saw that plane going overhead earlier and the seaplane taking off? There's a ceiling on the city of Seattle of 1,000 feet, okay, for all these flight paths. If you have a tower over 1,000 feet, basically you have to pay for them to change their flight path. Now we're about halfway through the tour here, folks. We're passing West Seattle here on the right-hand side of us. That's where we keep the Western Seattle. It's a lot of residences over there. It's actually the oldest neighborhood in the city. This is the beginning of the industrial portion of the tour. And we can also see some big container cranes off our right-hand side. Those are gantry cranes. Those actually are the newest gantry cranes that we have in this area. They were shipped here, fully assembled on the back of a heavy lift ship, and then shoved off onto the land, which is a pretty remarkable way to move stuff. These dry docks here, these gray U-shaped structures, are designed to haul boats completely up out of the water, so you can do stuff to the underside of them. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to paint something underwater. Really tough to paint underwater. So they haul them up out of the water to do all sorts of maintenance to the underside. This factory fisher just got pulled up a few days ago. And these last 2 dry docks here, the middle one is a missile cruiser for the U.S. Navy. You can see they have the propeller shaft disassembled on that starboard side, or the right-hand side. Looks like they're working on the port side now. And there's also on the left-hand side dry dock there, that is a littoral combat vessel. Now, littoral combat vessels are designed for very shallow water, and they're pretty darn fast. That's because that is the largest jet ski you've ever seen in your entire life, I guarantee it. That's right, it runs just the same as a jet ski. They shoot water out of those circular holes there in the back of it. And that's going to be able to make it go really, really fast. In order to grab a container, they have to, with the aid of a computer, get it to be within a couple of feet. Then they have to manually adjust it to be within mere inches. That way you can grab the container properly and you can move it wherever it needs to go. The longshoreman crane operator usually makes about 6 figures a year. It's not a salary, it's an hourly rate, they get overtime and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's a pretty sought after job here in the longshoreman industry. In order to get that job, here's what you gotta do. Spend 6 years in the longshoreman unit doing whatever else they need you to do here on the land. You're driving containers around, you can be using one of these smaller land-based cranes to pick these up and organize them, whatever else they need you to do. And then you have to put your name in for a lottery. And you and 10,000 other people are going to get drawn. I think they drew like 100 people to actually look at the resumes out. And if you win that lottery, this is the hardest part in my opinion, you have to do your interview all the way at the top of that crane. I don't mean where the operator box is. I mean, do you see that rickety zigzag staircase all the way up to the very, very top? That's where you do the interview. These cranes are some of the biggest on the West Coast. They can handle some of the very large ships that come into this area. And much of that has to do with their height. But nowadays, cruise ships, or container ships, I should say, are actually getting wider. They're finding that as a way to stuff more containers on these container ships and to make them wider. I believe the widest container ship is 24 containers wide, which is crazy. But these ones can handle 28. They have wheels there on the bottom. And you might be wondering to yourself, these crane operators ever drop a container? And they do, very occasionally. This is still the safest, most effective means of moving international cargo on boats, basically. It's safer than trains, definitely safer than trucks by containers lost. And many of these containers actually come off not in a port like this, but actually in big storms out there in the Pacific. We've got the number 20 Healy right here. That's the icebreaker for the Arctic Ocean up to the north. These icebreakers crack through sheets of ice 6 feet thick, 7 knots continuously. That's a little bit faster than we're going right now. And they do this by a special rounded shape to the hull. It's not like a big blade, it's a rounded shape. And so that when they climb on top of the sheet of ice, the sheer weight of the superstructure and the extra fuel on board, enough to circumnavigate the globe 5.6 times, cracks through that sheet of ice, and then they kind of chop through it up and down. Seems like a pretty crazy ride, right? If the sheet of ice is too thick, they've been known actually to throw dynamite down on it as well. On the right, we can see quite a few things here. We've got our stadium district on our right-hand side, and the other two of our stadiums here. We've got T-Mobile Park, crisscrossing arches crossing over the top there. T-Mobile Park is home to the Seattle Mariners. They're doing their opening night game today, which is pretty exciting. I know at least 2 people on board are going. The thing I like to talk about T-Mobile Park is the roof can actually open and close in about 15 minutes. And when it was constructed, it was the most expensive single-use stadium in the world. That means it's only used by one sports team or entity. Now on the left, we've got Lumen Field. Lumen Field has that big white arch over the top, and it's got the curved roof. It kind of looks like a satellite dish or a clamshell. And when the fans get especially loud in Lumen Field, that actually echoes the sound from the roof down into the center of the field, and they can actually cause small earthquakes, which is pretty fantastic. It's tied back and forth, I believe, with Kansas City for the loudest football stadium. We can see this Washington State Ferry is pushing into the dock here ahead of us and to our right. They are doing what's known as a controlled crash. We're not going to be doing a controlled crash today. We're not going to be doing a regular crash today. We're going to pull a nice little dock and secure the boat. But the Spokane here, well, she's designed for it. She can push right up against the dock there, and then they're going to offload all their cars and passengers, drive everybody back on, and then they're going to head right off in the other direction. But you can notice that the propeller is in gear right now. That white foam coming off the back of the boat, that means that they're pushing against the dock. It's been an absolute pleasure. We are making our turn here to head back into the dock. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Just got off the boat on the dock now. That was very, very good. I would definitely do that again. Extremely calming being out there. Tons of amazing views of, well, everything really. You're right next to these interesting glass structures. There's kind of office space inside of there. A lot of greenery as well. We're going to this restaurant right here, just below that little black sign with a tree and fork. It's called 2120. Just get an appetizer and a drink or so right before we go into Scotch Fest. We are going to be getting the steak tartare. Very interesting looking item. Never eaten anything like that before. I will also be getting the spring old fashioned for my cocktail. Here's the spring old fashioned out of 4 Roses bourbon, salted caramel, and aromatic bitters. I'd say it's much more sweet and smooth than a typical old fashioned that I'm used to. This is steak tartare. It's Wagyu New York beef, shallot, evu, parsley, egg yolk, pickled mustard seed, and house chips. This is what it looks like after you mix it up and you eat a little bit of it. It's very good. It tastes like a lot of dips I've had before in a lot of ways, but a much more fresh flavor to it. Kind of salty, pickly. And then the meat has just a very interesting, soft, kind of slimy texture. It's very good. We definitely get this again. Now we'll be entering Seattle Scotch and Beer Fest. Here it is. Oh, is that a Yeti? He just chilling. Now, this is what you get with entry. Here's a little guide to the event. A couple of flights you can get. the beer and cider selection, some cocktails, a map. Then over here, looks like I can sample all these, and I can buy a bottle here as well. Here's my little punch card. I will need this, can't lose it. Then here's my little tasting glass. Also, comes with this, buy a $1 lotto, get a $1 lotto free. Probably not worth very much, but whatever. First drink of the night, Overstory Peated Reserve. Here it is, got the highest alcohol content of any beer here at 11.6%. It tastes very strong, very stouty. Honestly gives a little bit of a vibe of like a darker liquor or something like that almost, but it's still very much a beer. Drink number 2 is the Malibu Pina Colada, rum, coconut, pineapple. See, these ones take 2 punches, whereas the smiley face was the beer I just had. It's really good. Nice and sweet, pineapple and coconut. Very smooth. Drink number 3, back to beer. Stash Panda, Hazy IPA, Hop Valley Brewing, about 6.5 alcohol by volume. I'd say it's a very light APA, not very hoppy at all. Actually, even a little bit sweet. This is Sky Kraken from Fremont Brewery, 5.5% ABV. This brewery's very close to here. I'd say it's very light. Now this one, drink number 5, is the Wee Terrier Scotch Ale from Doghouse Brewery, 6.7% ABV. I also like how they drew a little dog bone to represent my punch card. I like when they do a little bit more than the X. It's pretty good though. Very unique taste. Definitely, I mean, it tastes about as much as a beer could taste like Scotch while still being a beer, I would say. For something called Scotch Fest, I'm not drinking any Scotch. Now this is Wild Blackberry Lemonade, a seltzer. First and probably only seltzer I'm going to have tonight. Also the lowest ABV I've had tonight at 4.2%. It's very good, very light, very sweet, very smooth. I typically don't really like seltzers at all, but this is very, very good. I would definitely get this again. Actually, probably the best seltzer I've ever had, quite frankly. I love blackberry and I love lemonade, so it hits a lot of notes for me. And now I got a full tasting card. 7th and final drink is the Gumbaroo IPA from Rogue Brewing, 6.8% ABV. It's very good. Very light, I'd say. I mean, almost all the beers I got tonight were light, except for the very first one I got. I mean, I should say light relative to an IPA. Not very hoppy, I would say, at all. That is it for Scotch and Beer Fest, though really was more so a beer fest. They had Scotch, but it was only available in flight form, and with what paid for admission, it came with a punch card you couldn't use on the flights, and flights were an extra charge, and it just didn't quite work out for us. But every drink I had, I enjoyed for the most part. I mean, I always enjoy sampling local breweries, whatever. Always good to get a good variety, as I did. So, can't really complain. All right, on to the next thing. Now we're gonna stop for a little pizza by the slice. And here's the menu. What stands out to me in particular is the Tom Selleck. That sounds like a perfect pizza combo for me. But not quite hungry enough for a full pizza. So by the slice it is. The rotating is feta and spinach. I'm getting pepperoni. Also, Mariners home opener, and they are destroying the Astros. And here it is. Loaded up with Parmesan and red pepper flakes. Looks like a beautiful late night snack. It's very good pepperoni. Not quite as good as the one I had at Pike's Place earlier. I mean, that one was really special, but this one is very much above average as well. got a second slice. It is their third slice, the rotating slice, spinach and feta. Loaded up with Parmesan and red pepper flakes as well. Beautiful. I think I'd actually have to rate the spinach and feta higher than pepperoni. I love feta cheese, and it mixes really well with spinach. It's the flavor they make together. Final stop of the night. Gonna get a little bit of dessert at Hot Cakes. This is the Dark Decadence. I did not order this, but apparently they made this extra by mistake or cancellation. I have no idea, but they offered it to us for free before I get what I did order. This is Theo chocolate, dry burn caramel, cocoa nib toffee, and vanilla ice cream. Looks beautiful. Yeah, this is amazing. You can really taste that toffee and the ice cream. And that is very dark chocolate in there. Typically don't get dark chocolate in a cake type dessert so much. It's a really great combo. Mix them together as they're supposed to. And now this is the peanut butter molten cake, which is the actual item we ordered, which looks downright delicious. It is made with Theo chocolate, peanut butter fudge, peanut butter caramel, toasted peanuts, and vanilla ice cream. Yeah, this peanut butter molten cake is definitely the better of the two. Slightly less rich than the dark chocolate, which was very dark. Probably could use more vanilla ice cream, but this is basically just less rich and the same amount of vanilla ice cream, which is just a better combination. I just discovered the peanut butter fudge layer below the ice cream, and wow, that is special. Wow. Good way to end the night, good way to end the trip. I just feel like I just got punched in the face with chocolate and some other variations of sugar as well. Gonna be flying back tomorrow. I'll have another video on that. It's good trip. All right, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.